U.S.-China trade war seems to be about politics and economics. It's also dragged scientists into the conflict. Why did a leading global publisher of scientific journals just reverse its ban of editorial contributors from Huawei, the Chinese telecoms giant? And China will soon grant licenses for domestic commercial use of 5G. How might that drive 5G development globally? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Bixin. It's one thing to block the Chinese telecoms giant Huawei from doing business with American companies, but it's another to also try to prevent Huawei science and technology experts from interacting with their American counterparts. On Sunday, one of the world's leading publishers of scientific journals reversed its decision last week to ban Huawei employees from contributing editorial content. The Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEEE, had earlier stated that it was legally obliged to follow U.S. law. Yet that decision sparked an outcry among its huge membership and protests from the Chinese scientific community. Why did this publisher impose the initial ban, and what caused its reversal? Is there a risk of a wall being erected between scientists? I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Ms. Han Hua, a fellow at the Chongyang Institution for Financial Studies at Renmin University in China, and Harvey Dzodin, a senior fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. So welcome to both of you to The Point. So the ban, we already know, right, by the U.S. government on Huawei and its affiliates to do business with American companies. But this was the very first time an international organization, by the way, it's registered in New York, it's a non-profit organization in the science and technology field, but this was the first NGO to comply with the U.S. government decision. Exactly what makes the IEEE so sensitive so that it acted so fast? Ms. Han.
Actually, I don't know why they react so sensitively and so immediately right after U.S. government issued the ban over Huawei company, because as you said, it is a non-profit organization and non-government organization. So it should be fair, and like the international trade principle, we always say open, fair, and free. It applies to the scientific research and community as well, or even we always say that science without borders. So for a publication platform like IEEE, which is the largest platform for this area, it should at least consider or have a second thought on this kind of reaction. And I'm thinking that back in reflection, they need to have try to seek a middle ground. First, to seek or consult with some internal or external experts, not only in the law enforcement, but also PR, because it's really bad image building.
But the company says it needed to respect the U.S. laws, and it needed to do it basically as soon as possible, otherwise the company will face consequences. But meanwhile, it was seeking clarification from the U.S. government. So, Harvey, how do you look at the move of this organization in doing this?
A lot of damage was done, but I don't fault the organization. I try to look at these regulations. They're very dense, and also you have the coercive power of the United States federal government. Penalties are extreme, up to millions of dollars, and also prison sentences. So it really concentrates the mind. You could have said would have, should have, could have, checked with the Commerce Department, who doesn't usually react so quickly, but I think they were doing their due diligence. The problem is that damage was done. Damage to the reputation of Huawei, damage to the reputation of Huawei scientists, damage to the reputation of Chinese scientists. And even though the ban has been reversed, the damage maintained.
Do you think it was a damage on the reputation of the Chinese players, let's say, or was it a damage on the part of the IEEE? Because in the eyes of many Chinese scientists, the IEEE clearly didn't follow the principle of science without borders, the openness, the independence, and the non-politicization of science.
I personally think that they did the right thing. They may have been able to do it with more finesse, but people in China have a right to be upset about it. But I think, again, that the problem lies with the federal government trying to encircle China, not with this organization that was trying to protect its members from draconian laws and regulations that have been promulgated by the Trump administration.
So how important, how significant would this move? Because there was an outcry, a very strong one. There are various reactions. For instance, this China Computers Federation was giving out a statement calling for a temporary halt in communication with the IEEE, and then they also disencouraged their members to contribute, to cooperate, and then there are scientists sending out letters. Exactly how severe was the kind of restrictions that was going to go into place, for instance, the peer review and edit research papers? What exactly could have happened against Huawei's interest and against the interests of Chinese scientists in general?
You know, in practice, the scientists or the engineers, they do not get payments or rewards from publishing their scientific research papers or lab results. They get them out to these platforms, these publication platforms, to get peer review, to get editors edit, in order to have their research innovations and inventions upgraded and hopefully to be applied in the industry practice. This is the normal cycle, or we call it ecosystem, within the scientific community. So IEEE's reaction, even though it may apply to its charter of the formation of this organization, or probably the principle of its territory, may have its ground, but still it already created damage to not only IEEE because it's cut the link between the Chinese scientists, but also the scientists from other countries may think or concerned about what other following up procedures might be having towards this kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, Harvey, your view, please.
My view is that if the thing had stood, it would have done irreparable harm, because peer review is the gold standard of journals and of scientific inquiry. And not being able to do peer review means you get a competitive disadvantage because you have to wait till the article is published. And it also means that you can't contribute your knowledge. And let's face it, the people who do peer review are la creme de la creme. They're not ordinary people in the field. Why is this important? China, since 2017, is now the leader in the number of scientific research papers that are published. The United States used to be the leader for most of the 20th century, but now it's China. So if this had stood, China would not be able to contribute to the world to technological advancement. And we sometimes get...
But you're you're talking about China. You're talking about China, but this is just Huawei being kind of prevented or excluded.
No, it's not just Huawei, because there's other entities on this entity list. I call it the enemies list, but the entity list that the Department of Commerce has come up with, it's not just Huawei. Huawei are about half of the companies. So it affects more than Huawei. But Huawei is the prime target.
But it's really peculiar, because a lot of people understand this move was as a political one, as one to prevent Chinese scientists, as you said, to contribute and to interact with the creme de la creme of the scientific community from around the world. But on the other hand, after receiving clarification from the U.S. Department of Commerce, the IEEE actually lifted the initial ban, saying basically that these export control restrictions are not applicable to IEEE publication activities, and based on this new information, employees of Huawei and its employer can continue to participate in all of the activities of IEEE. So was this a political move, or was it not a political move, Han Hua?
I think they are both. As I said, in the first place, IEEE can do in a mild way. They can consult both inside and externally regarding the legal enforcement as well as the PR branding. But they reacted immediately after the Department of Commerce issued this ban or this entity list. So they did not choose the middle ground where both of the scientists cannot be directly to
reversed its position.
But within this
position.
week, already damages. On this regard, I agree with Harvey that damages has been made on both sides. For IEEE, not only the image damage, but also they set a very bad example of cutting the links of this ecosystem, and for all the scientists worldwide to contribute together.
What about the kind of is there a lesson to come out of this? I mean, Harvey, what do you think? From the Chinese side, is there anything that they could have done, or from the IEEE side?
I think the IEEE could have, before they announced the policy, they could have tried to get a quick answer from the Commerce Department. Maybe they did or didn't. We don't know.
Because it's just days, right?
Right,
They announced the ban, and then
So
maybe 3 days later, they reversed it. You know, maybe if
within
they
a week.
in
But
a couple
I think
of
from
days.
the Chinese side, there's not much they could have done except protest, because when people protested, scientists protested, companies protested, it appeared to be in effect. But I can understand the IEEE's position. They didn't want to be fined. They didn't want their executives to go to jail, so they were taking the safe course of action. Again, I blame the Trump administration.
There should be some grace period, like 1 week or 2 weeks, for this kind of reactions or this kind of activities to be discussed behind the scene, not to bring them to the table or to the front line, making the scientists, the innocent scientists, to talk about politics.
I understand that.
And also, in my opinion, lessons learned from the Chinese part is that maybe we should take part into more international organizations, not only from
international governance.
Governance, yeah.
Let me come to this. Is there a potential danger that scientific communities could be separated? There could be a wall being erected among scientists from different sides, Harvey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see so many walls being built at the moment, and we see the trade war and other things related to it descending down a rabbit hole, and the further it descends, the harder it is to get out. So I worry about this bifurcated world, because what it means is that we can't work together. You know, President Xi talked about the fact that there should be a new model of great power relations. We have so many problems in the world, like the environment, infrastructure. If we could only work together on the things where we can make progress together and where our interests overlap. And this is what President Xi and President Obama started with the Paris Climate Accords. But President Trump, the first time he was in office, he did away with that.
But some people are saying, look, the U.S. Scientific communities and institutions basically contributed a lot to the scientific exchanges between the two countries, and China benefited greatly, and yet it seems that this relationship has not been balanced, just as, you know, the kind of trade relationship in the eyes of the Americans. Hanhua, how do you
We are
react
not
to that?
scientific experts, but I believe that both countries are beneficial from each other, and China, at this time, I think China is ready to contribute more. Like, you know, there are so many Huawei scientists and engineers are contributing to the IEEE platform.
Not only ready, because they're now the leader in the world of these journal articles.
As you said.
They're more than ready. They're there. They're the leader. China is the leader now.
Okay, so it would be really a pity if scientists are compartmentalized, let's say.